Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Jack-O-Ween. I'm, of course, your host, Jack Knives. This episode is going to be somewhat different than my normal reviews slash countdowns. This will count as my annual countdown that I do for every Jack-O-Ween. I had several ideas originally, mostly to do with style or maybe era of horror movies. But then, unfortunately, the world lost one of, if not the biggest, musical horror icons of all time. I'm, of course, talking about John Michael Osbourne, or as we all know and love him, Ozzy Osbourne. We knew that he was suffering from Parkinson's, had multiple stints with death, and kind of almost became friends with the macabre in itself. Going from musician to cultural icon to pop culture phenomenon. Even his family by proxy becoming famous solely off of his own name recognition. Going from the birth of metal in Black Sabbath to being one of the most prominent singles performers of all time. To pretty much doing everything. The true caliber of his work has and is always going to be his music, be it with Black Sabbath or with himself. And as the months have gone by since his unfortunate passing, many songs do repeat on the radio. Songs that we know very familiar with, such as Iron Man, Paranoid, Crazy Train, No More Tears, just to name a few. But for me, I know so much of his work. I have both his and Black Sabbath's complete discography on my phone and will just randomly shuffle through songs. To say he was an influence to me is an understatement, and I know I'm not the only one. Hell, my first intro to my show was actually the guitar riff for I Don't Want to Change the World, because it's just such a banger song and I really felt that I resonated with the lyrics and what they meant. But what does that actually entail with this video? Well, I thought really hard about it, and I felt I want to honor the Ozman himself, the Prince of Darkness, as we collectively say goodbye. And so I have hand-selected 10 underplayed songs from both Black Sabbath and his discography. Now, these go to a sentimental purpose, and granted, I know maybe not every song everyone's going to like, and that's fine. These are more songs that I feel resonate to the vibe of what Ozzy was, his style, his personification, and honestly, they're also just amazing songs that never really get the real recognition they truly deserve, and are actually, in my mind, kind of better than a lot of the more popular songs that are played constantly on the radio. So, let me change real quick. There. Now we're a little more comfortable. Let's get into some good jams. These are the top 10 underrated Ozzy Osbourne songs. Now, before I get into the list, there's a couple of criteria I just got to get quickly out of the way. Unfortunately, due to copyright, I cannot play the songs themselves. You know, don't want to be struck down by YouTube and their evil copyright goblins. But I can actually put the link to each song in the tracks in the description below. So that way you can enjoy them once this list is actually done, and hopefully find some gems that you may like yourself. Number 2. These are not in any particular order. These are more just kind of ones based off of vibe and connection that I feel that maybe should get a little more recognition than they obviously don't get. To make this list fair, I picked 5 Ozzy and 5 Sabbath songs. 1 song per track to make it fair, and it's more of just a vibe thing. It's not necessarily to say one song is better than the other. This is personal preference and subjective to taste. So, you may find one song you like more than another, or you may find a song that you resonate with better than another. This is more of a tribute to what he's meant to me, and to hopefully get anyone new or old to check out some little more on the underrated side of their gems. Peace of Mind feels like the final real attempt at making a Sabbath song, an original old school Black Sabbath song. It has a little bit of positivity, which Sabbath, of course, has been known to dabble into, but generally they try to keep to a darker tone. But I do enjoy this song because it feels very much like a reflection of what they were. For a little bit of history, Black Sabbath has gone through a series of singers. Originally, Ozzy was, of course, the original frontman. Then he was fired and replaced with Ronnie James Dio, which I also recommend checking out his stuff too. They actually changed their sound pretty significantly, changing their name to Heaven and Hell, once again with a different singer I can't remember off the top of my head, and then finally coming back again with Ozzy to release one or two final albums. This album was actually probably one of the most underrated albums in their repertoire. Not just from the past, just in general. It's one of those albums that when you listen to their earlier stuff and then you listen to this album, you kind of get this vibe of, wow, we really have been through a lot, haven't we? Let's gather around one last time and have a jam session. That's what I like about this song too. It feels like one last round of drinks with the boys. Like, come on guys, let's play one more song together. Even though it wasn't meant to be a hit, and realistically most people haven't heard of it, it is one of those songs that I feel if you give it some time and a little peace of mind, you might enjoy it yourself. Now I am cheating a little bit with this entry because of the fact that even though it's not super popular, it is a well-known song in the Ozzy fandom circle. But it's not actually played very often. It could be because it's more of a ballad. It could be because it's more extended than his other songs. Or maybe it's because people don't really know how to really take it. The song is obviously the title track of the same name on the album, but what makes it so cool is the terminology of it. Really listening to the lyrics, listening to the song, it truly does feel like a person who's losing their mind. As you get older, it feels more like you're reading not a person who's gone crazy, but more a person who's just overwhelmed by anxiety and depression and things that go ahead of its time. It truly is. It's one of the most ahead of its time songs. There's this amazing video of a psychologist actually listening to the song, reading the lyrics, and we're going, wow, this is ahead of its time. Like, I mean, it uses terms like manic depression, things like that that were almost never discussed in public forums. And it showed the depth and the range that Ozzy had to do the research to actually add those sort of things into his lyrics. It's not just the story of a man who's going crazy. It's the story of a man who can't trust himself. If you've ever been in one of those painful mental health spirals, it's one of the most relatable songs anywhere on any album you can ever hear. Bit of a disclaimer, I don't really like Volume 4. I know it's got a soft space for a lot of people, especially in the Sabbath circles, that love this album, but for me it just felt so whiplashy in tone. I couldn't really get myself into it. I mean, hearing the song like this, Supernaut, that's just all power, just like it feels like something's just driving a nail into a spike and just hammering and machines and just and then a song like changes and you're like, what just happened? It's a bit of a whiplash, but Supernaut is one of the coolest heavy songs. I've heard multiple bands cover the song, it's just got this power to it. It makes you feel like bigger than you are. You could put this song to literally any mech anime fight or any big monster battle that just has really good effects to it, and it fits. Like, that's all this song is. It's just pure power and anger and punishment and just Supernaut. Just that name alone, Supernaut. That's just a cool sounding name, and it feels just it gets you hyped when you hear it. If you want to get into a good Sabbath song and you want to get pumped, you put on Supernaut. I would say that No Rest for the Wicked is probably one of Ozzy's most underrated albums. Obviously, we know the song Miracle Man. For those that don't really know the backstory of that song, basically there was a televangelist who was always against Ozzy Osbourne and metal in general and saying it was causing the satanic panic and all that, yada, yada, yada. But specifically attacking Ozzy on a regular basis. But same guy who was doing that ended up getting caught cheating with one of the people who was working for him while being married. And so in response, Ozzy created the song Miracle Man as a big middle finger to him and just talking about the irony of a godly man, holier than thou, and also doing things against the church. So when he's talking about Little Jimmy Sinner, that's who he's talking about. But as far as breaking all the rules, it is a song that gets you hyped, and you're waiting and waiting for it to build up. It kind of goes into that same kind of tone as Miracle Man, in the sense of it's Ozzy being Ozzy, pushing buttons and not caring what anyone really thinks. I mean, the lyrics say it all. Nobody thinks the way I do. It seems that nobody cares. My head's so full of things, and my mind's making them, I'm breaking the rules. Because that's what he did. He broke rules. He broke boundaries. He did every drug imaginable, and he kept swinging against every hater and just kept coming over and over again. Song itself is just really pumped up. It feels like a march, but it also feels like you're like hyping yourself up. And that kind of vibe and the transition of the drums just was so cool to hear the first time you hear it. And it's just got this cool vibe. It's also kind of weird because it was during that blonde era of Ozzy where after Diary of a Madman, he had this really bright, poofy blonde hair. And seeing Ozzy later with the long streaked black hair like he did younger, it's such a whiplash when you rewatch this music video. But it is a fun song. It really does feel like Ozzy personified. What's cool about the song A Natural Acrobat, off of the Sabbath Bloody Sabbath album, is it kind of has this weird vibe of teetering, like you're kind of almost getting dizzy while listening to it. And that's kind of what I like about it. It feels kind of dreamlike, if that makes any sense. It feels a little more like you're being rocked, like you're on a boat or something like that. And that's kind of what I like about it. It doesn't quite sound too much in the metal scope, and it doesn't really sound too much like Sabbath that much. I mean, it does, but it's clearly obviously Sabbath, but it has a little more on the experimental side, and that's kind of what I like about it. I think it's one of those songs that's a little on the lighter side. When you hear the song and you find out it's by Black Sabbath, you're like, huh, didn't expect this to be a Sabbath song. But yeah, it is. And because of that, it has this kind of cool quality to it. It's like a hidden gem that most people have never really seen. It's kind of like finding something in the back of your closet or in the back of your garage that you kind of forgot about and dusting it off and going, oh yeah, like that's kind of what this song feels like in that kind of way. And that is why I put it on this list. This feels like Ozzy's rebirth song. It's the song that pushed the pop culture fans into listening to his old stuff. Around the time that this album came out, the Osbournes were in their heyday. They were more known by the mainstream for that show or for Pepsi ads or different things that they were doing together as a family than Ozzy did on his own. Now, I'm specifically talking about to the mainstream audience. Obviously, music fans and, metalheads, we all know who Ozzy was. But I'm talking specifically about the mainstream community. It felt at the time that he lost his edge because he became more of a at-home, family man, relatable dad. Who is this guy? He's not the Prince of Darkness. He's just some guy. He's a washed-up musician. He doesn't got it anymore. But with this album, he proved everyone wrong. And specifically this song gets me through. When I first heard this song, it literally gave me goosebumps. Love it because it feels like a big F you to people who judged him. You think just because of this and because of this, you know me? You don't know me at all. You don't know anything about me. The people that really know me have always been there with me. And this is kind of a way to introduce it to the mainstream. It's got this sick, awesome, gnarly riff from Zakk Wylde that just, I love it. It's so cool. It pumps you up. It feels like, weirdly enough, like you're walking in an arena, like you're in a wrestling ring or boxing ring or a big show. Just that vibe of like walking down a hallway where you're just like building yourself up, and everyone's looking at you like, "Who's that guy? Who's that guy?" Like that's what Ozzy was doing. He was getting everyone's attention on him. Kind of almost rejuvenated his career and introduced him to a mainstream audience that probably never really listened to his older stuff. Sure, they've heard a couple songs that were played on the radio, but they weren't really actively listening to it. But this album changed that completely. This song was a huge part of that. This is the least sounding Black Sabbath song ever. Well, okay, maybe not compared to Changes, but as far as a straight up Sabbath song, it doesn't sound like Sabbath. It doesn't sound like Ozzy. Honestly, it kind of sounds like Genesis, like Peter Gabriel Genesis, or some psychedelic music. And honestly, it also kind of feels that this song influenced some later stuff from Faith No More, but I could be reading too much into this. What's so cool about this song, Am I Going Insane, is it's like you feel like you're falling. Like you're falling in a pit, like Alice in Wonderland, like seeing these horrible imageries or going through a tunnel with weird stuff, and you're just it's your head echoing to yourself, am I going insane? And you're like, am I? What is this? This is so weird. I can only imagine what this sounded like when this album first dropped in the 70s. But it's so cool. And even the cover album is pretty sick. Most Sabbath albums have some pretty cool artwork. Sabbath Bloody Sabbath is also one of my favorite album covers ever. But Sabotage has a really cool album cover because it's got this weird giant parallel mirror thing with the band. And it's just kind of cool the way they did it. And I think that's what this vibe for this album comes from. And this song specifically brings out this kind of experimentation that Sabbath loved to do. Because you have to understand, when Sabbath started, there was nothing else before them as far as metal. Heavy metal was all experimental. In the same way that the early series of rock and rockabilly, they did weird things like let's add some chimes, let's add some jingle bells here and there. Like it was all trying out new stuff until they got it down pat. Sabbath was in that same experimental phase, so was Led Zeppelin, because they were in the early stages of what we know as metal. And because of that, this feels like that kind of heyday of experimentation, but it really succeeded in doing that. And it's a song that, if you played it for even probably most hardcore Ozzy fans, they wouldn't really recognize it as Ozzy because it doesn't really even sound like him, but it is him singing. And I think his weirdness just is on full display in this song. So in order to get context as to why I love this song so much, I need to give you a little bit of backstory. Imagine it's 1996. Beavis and Butthead Do America hits the big screen. And you, as an avid fan at a fairly young age, loved Beavis and Butthead, but you really wanted to get more into their music and the stuff that they enjoyed. And there's a scene where they're driving off into the desert. These weird chimes. You hear this weird ethereal stuff, and then all of a sudden you hear that guitar riff. And you hear Ozzy's booming voice just kind of yelling at you, and he's telling you a story about a person who's alleged to be a prophet, but he's not. This is the makings of a freaking banger song called Walk on Water. But now I want you to imagine that this song was on a movie soundtrack. You get the movie soundtrack. The version on the soundtrack isn't the one you heard. It's completely different sounding. It's too weird. It's too experimental. It doesn't sound like the same song. And you're like, what happened to the same song? And you look everywhere. And this is early days of the internet. So you're trying to figure out, where did I hear this song? I know I heard this song. You replay it on the movie, on the VHS you have. And you hear the album, and it's totally different. Then, years later, they come up with a greatest hits album, and the song Walk on Water's on there. You hear it again, but it's the same one from the damn soundtrack, so it's not the same song, and you drive yourself nuts. And then, in 2005, Ozzy releases a 4-disc box set called Prince of Darkness, where that version finally released. The demo of Walk on Water. And it's the song you remembered from all those years ago. And once you hear those chimes and you hear that song, it just takes you away and floats you away. It's like what would happen if Ozzy put a song onto Aladdin. The song feels and sounds like you're on a journey and Ozzy's guiding you. Like he's quite literally just along with the ride for it. I love this song. I got this box set when it first came out as a Christmas gift. And I listened to it, and I mainly got it for this song, and then heard the single worst song in the history of forever that Ozzy ever did, which was a Born to Be Wild cover with Miss Piggy that I still have nightmares about to this day. Anyway, the song itself is still really, really good, and it still holds up, and it shows the kind of weird transition between Am I Going Insane and Walk on Water, where Ozzy was still experimenting, even on his solo stuff in the 90s. And you get to see the inner workings of his mind. It's one of those songs that's never played on the radio, but it sticks with you when you first hear it, and I love it. To this day, it's still one of my favorite Ozzy songs ever. Probably the fastest song I can think of in Sabbath's repertoire with Ozzy is Never Say Die. Song that pumps you up. It's positivity in its purest form, which for Sabbath is kind of a weird switch up, with weird lyrics referencing the mirror from Snow White and things that you're just kind of like, okay. It really does feel like you're in a car that's going really, really fast and you're just driving by signs and you're like, oh, what's going, That's what this song feels like. And it hypes you too, because it tells you don't give up. Do not give up. And I think deep down, Ozzy was always in that mindset. And I think he's always had this whole, I'm not going to give up no matter what. I have to keep trying. Even in his darkest points, his lowest of the low, and his saddest parts in his career, his life, and things. I mean, hell, the man broke his neck. He almost died multiple times, but he didn't give up. And this song is the epitome of that. Never saying die. But there's one other song that takes that same mentality and pushes it to a new level. And it also is the number one song on this list. What's better than one rock god telling you about their struggles and the things that they go through? Two. And doing the same song several years later, and eventually syncing up both songs, making this the ultimate collaboration in metal, in my opinion. Lemmy Kilmister was metal before metal. He was what we know as heavy metal. Sabbath dabbled in and laid the iron of the foundation of the fire that would become metal. But Motorhead was the hammer. Motorhead was the forge that put it together. And Lemmy lived it. What's so cool about Lemmy and Ozzy was they were almost identical. Not only were they best friends, they were non-judgmental to other people. They were asked questions like, should women play metal? Should women be in rock bands? And should black people be in rock bands? Stupid questions for mainstream pop culture that didn't get the idea that it's for whoever. I remember a great interview that Lemmy said when they asked him about should women play rock and roll, and he said, I remember being on tour with a band called Kitty, and my guitarist said, she plays pretty good for a chick. And I said, she plays better than you. And that's kind of how Lemmy was. Lemmy was such a badass that he quite literally drank an entire bottle of Jack Daniels almost on the daily, which sounds impossible, but it truly was a thing he did. To the point when he actually died of 4th stage brain cancer, he had drinking so much, he essentially pickled his brain, and a week prior to his death went into the hospital to find out about said stage 4 cancer, only to die a week later while on tour. And he didn't feel any pain because he had mentally numbed himself with the alcohol. Ozzy, same thing. He fought and fought and fought through pain. He said, I don't care if I have to sit in a throne. I'll figure out a way to be on stage to the bitter end. And both of them personified this. This song, Hellraiser, is exactly what they did. They raised hell. They brought down the thunder. They never gave up, and they kept going forward. It is the epitome of what it means to be a rock god and what it truly means to be immortalized into the heavy metal ether and be immortalized by us fans and, in general, what it means to forever be badasses. Well, that's the end of my countdown list for this year. But don't worry, we're going to get back to the horror aspect in the next episode. Before I go, I want to give a sincere thank you to Ozzy, Lemmy, Sabbath, the Osbournes, and every one of these things and people that helped make my life much better with his influential music, his style, his personification, and what made him great helped me be better as a person. There will only ever be one Ozzy, and nothing I will ever say can do justice for what he's done for me and for so many others.